The grand hall of the Red Keep shivered with tension as lords and ladies of Westeros gathered beneath the vaulted ceiling, their eyes flicking between the raised dais and the jagged sunlight spilling through the high windows. The clang of steel on stone echoed as the king's guard formed a tight semicircle around the dais, all bearing witness to the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. Cloaked in simple black robes, Varys, once the most enigmatic spider of King's Landing, stepped forward, his bald head gleaming like burnished ivory beneath the torchlight. His delicate hands, always so sure when guiding whispered secrets through the city's labyrinth, now trembled visibly as he reached beneath his outer garment. Silence fell, heavy and electric. Even the crackle of the hearth seemed stifled by the gravity of the moment. Maesters leaned close to their glass phials, quills poised for the chronicle of this day's marvel. Across the hall, Queen Daenerys Targaryen, ensconced upon her dragon-helmed throne, sat motionless, her violet eyes unreadable. Around her, her small council stood at rigid attention. Ser Jorah, the ever-faithful, Tyrion Lannister, whose gaze darted between shock and calculation, Grey Worm, unmoved but alert, and Missandei, fear brimming in her dark eyes. Varys drew forth a sealed parchment, the wax crest of House Targaryen stark against its ivory surface. "Your Grace," he said, voice resonant with conviction, "and loyal subjects of the realm, before you stands not merely Lord Varys, Master of Whispers, but Archon Valyrios, born of the blood of the dragon." He let the words hang for a heartbeat, an eternity in the hush. "I confess now, at long last, the secret I have borne for decades. I am a scion of House Targaryen, cast into exile as a child to protect the line and ensure the destiny of the Seven Kingdoms." A murmur rippled through the assembled crowd like wind through grain. Gasps, half-formed questions, and startled laughter flickered across noble faces. For a man whose talents lay in concealment and subtlety, Varys now offered a revelation so vast as to shatter the very foundations of power in Westeros. Queen Daenerys rose, her silver-gold hair cascading like molten silk. She fixed him with a gaze that was both thunder and ice. "You claim the blood of my house," she said, voice measured, betraying neither anger nor disbelief. "And yourself, Lord Varys, and why I should trust the word of a spider whose greatest skill is deception." At her challenge, Varys bowed low, cloak sweeping the floor. "Because, Your Grace, all my deceptions have served but one purpose: to restore the Targaryen line and bring justice to those who usurped your birthright. I was born Valyrios of the Blackwater, son of Prince Aemon, the late Duke of Summerhall, before the madness that claimed him and so many others. My blood was spilled, and I was spirited away by loyal retainers to survive the death of Summerhall's tragedy. I came to King's Landing under the guise of a eunuch, a creature of no consequence, so I might move unseen among your enemies and guide the wheel of fate toward your return." "Dandanchi," whispers swelled, and the winded hush broke into a cacophony of astonished voices. Some noble ladies clutched their lord's arms. Knights exchanged wary glances. The maesters frowned, as though uncertain whether to treat his confession as fact or fiction. Only Tyrion remained impassive, perhaps the only man in Westeros accustomed to political shocks. Daenerys' eyes narrowed. "And why reveal this now? Why betray the greatest secret you have ever kept, at the moment when my claim is strongest?" Her question cut like Valyrian steel. Varys lifted his head, meeting her gaze evenly. "Because I have learned that you are no longer merely the Dragon Queen who must conquer the realm by blood and fire. You have shown mercy, justice, and wisdom beyond the reckoning of any usurper before you. You do not seek to rule for yourself alone, but to heal and unite. In you I see the true promise of the Targaryen legacy. I could no longer serve in secret, while the realm henceforth, my path now and henceforth, must be clear." A tense moment passed, as though the very air paused to reckon with the weight of his words. Then Daenerys descended the steps of the dais, her skirts of dragon silk whispering across the stone. She came to stand before Varys, the small of his back to the great hall's wary audience. She placed a hand upon his shoulder, light as smoke. "Archon Valyrios," she said, voice soft yet carrying to every ear. You have hidden in shadows, so that I might find my true self in the light. Know that your service in any name shall be judged by its worth. If your cause is just, your place shall be within the hearth of my court. Then, relief, like the slow turning of a tide, swept through Varys' lined features. He drew a ragged breath. Thank you, your grace. I shall serve openly, without subterfuge, and lend you every ounce of my counsel and every thread of my network. The throne room erupted in murmurs once more, but now many voices rose in tentative approval. Noble houses recognizing the gravity of a Targaryen spy's allegiance. Some dismayed, others intrigued, but none could ignore the seismic shift. That night, as the moon rose pale above the battlements, Varys walked the corridors of the Red Keep without his customary cowl. His robe bore the crimson three-headed dragon upon black field, subtly stitched above his heart. Servants curtsied, and guards offered bows of respect. All saw him anew, not as the eunuch whisperer of secrets, but as a prince returned in hidden form. In the solitude of his chambers, he fastened a parchment to his writing desk. A letter destined for the lords of the Vale, the Reach, and the Rock. He would dispatch trusted couriers at dawn, carrying word of his true name and lineage. Allies long uncertain would rally. Dissenters would hesitate. The queen's enemies would be wary of every whisper, every shadow. Yet Varys knew that revelation invited danger as well as loyalty. There were men, Sir Kevin Lannister's kin, rogue knights, and faceless assassins, who would see his blood as target rather than asset. He steeled himself against betrayal, summoning in memory the faces of those who had sheltered him through boyhood's terror, who had taught him that power lay not merely in blood but in the will to wield it wisely. At the hearth, he stoked the embers until they glowed like molten glass. He watched the fire dance, thinking of the seven-pointed star, of the Red God, and the old gods beyond the wall. He thought of Aemon Targaryen, the Maester of the Night's Watch, whose hidden lineage mirrored his own, and of Daenerys, the breaker of chains, whose destiny he had long protected in the orchards of Egg's exile. Outside, a lone raven croaked, and Varys opened his window to the cool night air. A falcon's shadow passed over the moon, silent as a dream. He returned to the letter, dipped his quill, and inscribed, "To my liege lords and loyal friends across the realm, know that I am he whom many called the Spider, but my true name is Valyrios of the Blackwater, last scion of the blood of the dragon. I have served in shadows so that light might one day triumph. Now I stand revealed, that you may be sworn to me without deceit. Serve the queen, or hold this truth in mind for when the hour of reckoning arrives." He sealed the missive with molten fire, three-headed dragon emblazoned in wax, and dispatched his secret messenger, a crippled stable boy whose loyalty had never slipped. As dawn gilded the battlements, word flowed across Westeros. In the Reach, Lady Olenna Tyrell's laughter sounded, mirth tinged with cunning, while in the north, Sansa Stark's lips pressed into a thin line of suspicion. In the Stormlands, Gendry Baratheon's brow furrowed with conflicted loyalty. Every lord, every minor knight and petty burgess pondered the revelation of the Spider Prince. And at the heart of it all, Queen Daenerys rose in her solar, pale as snow, reading Varys' letter. She looked to the dragons coiled beyond the windows, their scales glinting like living armor. "The game is truly afoot," she whispered. "Let us see who plays wisely, and who will burn in the fires of truth." Thus began the turning of the wheel anew. Anew. Shadows laid bare, secrets unspun, and a realm poised upon the razor's edge of loyalty and betrayal. In the coming days, the tapestry of alliances would be rewoven in blood and flame, guided by the Spider who was no mere eunuch, but a Targaryen in exile, returned at last to claim his birthright in the world of kings and dragons. Oh, K. Oh. The dawnlight filtered through the narrow slit of Varys' solar, falling across the polished oaken floor, and illuminating the curling plume of smoke rising from his brazier. He sat at the low table, flanked by scattered letters and maps. the fresh correspondence from the Reach, the Vale, the Stormlands, and at the center lay Daenerys' reply, folded and sealed with her personal seal. 3 dragons in flight. His heart thrummed with both hope and apprehension as he broke the wax. The click of the seal like the tolling of a bell. Archon Veririos. Your revelation has shaken the foundations of this court, but know that truth, once set free, can reshape destinies. I accept your lineage, yet caution that blood alone does not win the realm. Prepare counsel on rallying our allies, for the lords will test this claim as one tugs at a spider's web. Daenerys Targaryen, Queen of Meereen, and Protector of the Realm. He refolded the letter, fingers brushing the hem of silk where the seal had been broken. The Queen's measured words were both an invitation and a warning. He would need to act with care, to marshal support without appearing desperate, to stoke loyalty without igniting fear. Before he could tremble at the enormity of his task, a soft knock sounded, and Grand Maester Pycelle entered, his robes trailing like a funeral pall. "My lord," he rasped, bowing. "News from the Reach. Lady Olenna writes that the Tyrell bannermen are divergent in their opinions. Some, like Lord Rowan, swear fealty. Others, House Fossaway among them, hold back, uncertain of the legitimacy of a hidden Targaryen." Varys nodded. "Their caution is natural. They will need incentive, not merely promises of gold or titles, but firm guarantees. Land restored, privileges renewed." He paused. "Summon Sir Garth Oakhart and Master Coleman. I will host a private council before midday." "And the North?" Pycelle pressed. Lady Sansa's reticence. He sighed. "Sansa Stark values certainty above all. We must offer her something more tangible than words. I will dispatch a raven with a proposition, an oath ceremony in the Godswood at Winterfell. Let her see the Stoneways in person, feel our sincerity." Pycelle inclined his head. "And the Stormlands?" "Gendry Baratheon is pragmatic," Varys mused. "He will respond to the promise of a prized wardship, Storm's End as bastion for his line, under the aegis of Targaryen restoration. Yet I must also keep him wary of Lannister machinations." He turned to his maps. "Plot a route. First Highgarden, then Storm's End, then Winterfell. At each stop, I will demand a small host, no more than 50 men, to escort me, so as not to alarm the small folk." The maester shuffled forward, unrolling a parchment. "Your Gracie's dragons have stirred whispers as well. Smoky, the small hatchling who roams beneath the walls, will remain secured," Varys interjected. "The people must not know our full strength until unity is assured. We use fear as tool, not terror." Pycelle nodded, but his wizened face bore doubt. Varys concealed his own misgivings. Even the Queen's dragons, few though they were, represented a power that might fracture alliances if flaunted too early. By midday, Varys stood before the assembled captains and envoys in the council chamber. A modest stone room off the main solar. At the head, he placed Dany's letter beside his own dispatches. The walls were bare, save for a simple iron brazier at one end, its embers glowing with latent heat. Sunlight slanted through barred windows, catching motes of dust like drifting motes of ember. Sir Garth Oakhart, Knight of the Reach, towered at the left flank, his white cloak spattered with dew from the rose garden. Master Coleman, Daenerys' new envoy from Meereen, sat poised with quill and ink. Across the table, 2 merchants from Lys and Tyrosh eyed each other warily. Sigils of braided ships and silver towers, indicating their rivalry. Varys clasped his hands. "Thank you, friends, for coming on short notice. The Queen has accepted my truth and seeks our counsel on binding the 7 kingdoms as one realm once more. I propose a threefold strategy. First, reaffirm fealty in the Reach with a grand tournament. Second, cement Stormland's loyalty with wardship oaths at Storm's End. Third, secure the North through sacred bonds in Winterfell's Godswood." Oakhart's voice rumbled. "A tournament is costly, my lord. The Reach demands lordly hospitality. Hospitality demands stables, feasts, wagers. Are you prepared to underwrite such extravagance?" Varys nodded. I have secured funds from the Iron Bank of Bravos. Reluctantly. But they recognize the promise of a stable realm. Your share will cover the lists and lodging. The Queen will supply the prizes. Then no. Coleman interjected. And what of the small folk? Should they see a Targaryen spider run from tourney lists to keep the peace, fear may rise. Varys smiled thinly. We will bill it as Daenerys' initiative, the Queen's grand concourse of unity, hosted by her most loyal servants. He glanced at Coleman. You will craft the proclamations. The Lycene poet scribbled diligently. Oakheart folded his arms. And Storm's End, a wardship ceremony under Lord Gendry, conducted in the name of the Queen. Varys replied. An heir, sworn with blade and vow. He tapped the map. We ride southeast within 2 days of Highgarden's lists. Gendry will attend the tourney as noble guest. Master Coleman raised an ink-stained hand. And the north? Sansa Stark will not leave her seat. She claims independence. She is wise to guard her realm. Varys agreed. But recall that Sansa has a daughter. Sweet Elaine, renamed by her lady mother. We will offer a formal betrothal. The daughter of Lady Stark to the Targaryen line. Warded at Dragonstone until her name is known. He leaned forward. That bond would give Sansa sacred stake in the restoration, rather than cold submission. The ministers murmured at this. Oakheart studied Varys. You gamble with blood, Archon. One wrong move. Girl of 9 summers promised to a queen's line. And the North rebels. He met Oakheart's gaze. Better a gambit of love than one of steel. Sansa fears nothing more than threats to her lineage. Varys' thin smile hinted at darker currents. But yes. If the North resists, we will muster Dothraki to demonstrate the dragon's will. Coleman paled. Dothraki? Varys shrugged. They will not cross the narrow sea. Yet the rumor of them at our flank will remind recalcitrant lords that mercy is the choice of power. A silence fell. Then Sir Garth nodded. Your plan, Archon, binds hope to strategy. I will muster the Reach banners within a moon's turn. Storm's End will follow in fortnight. I leave for Highgarden tomorrow. Varys cut him off. Tonight. You depart this very evening. The Queen's dragons fly soon. That night, Varys retired early, yet sleep eluded him. He paced his chambers, the crimson sigil heavy upon his breast, pondering the frailty of human loyalty. His mind drifted, as it so often did, to the lessons of his youth. The broken ramparts of Summerhall, the fevered screams of flame and ash, the faces of children he once led by hand away from death. He thought of his birth mother, whose gentle arms had wrapped him in the chill night breeze, and his father, whose princely pride had not broken under the weight of loss. He thought, too, of Aemon, the scholarly maester of the Wall, who had chosen penance over power. All had sacrificed for the greater good. A gentle knock brought him back to the present. The door opened, and Missandei slipped inside, her gray eyes rimmed with exhaustion. My lord, she whispered, the Queen bids you to dine, or at least to sup with her before your journey. He inclined his head. I will join her, but allow me a moment. She inclined. Oh, of course. When she closed the door, Varys offered a silent prayer to the old and new gods alike, asking for strength to see this gambit through. He clasped his hands behind his back and strode to the mirror, pale face. Sealy gaze, the spider in plain sight. The solar at Dragonstone glowed with torchlight when Varys arrived. Daenerys stood near the hearth, her hair bound in loose braids, gown of pale silver flowing like moonlight. Beside her, Tyrion Lannister leaned against a carved pillar, goblet in hand, brows furrowed in thought. Grey Worm and Missandei flanked the door. Silent guardians. Varys bowed deeply. Your Grace. She smiled, relief and determination in her violet eyes. You move faster than I anticipated. I see your commitment, Varys. Archon Valyros. She gestured to the hearth. Come, sit. We have little time before dawn. Then he seated himself on the cushioned bench. Tyrion offered a seat, which he accepted. The wine was poured, deep red, notes of blackberry and ash. Varys lifted the goblet. "To truth made light." She tapped her cup. "And to the future we will shape." They drank. Outside, dragons roared in distant caverns, steel and shadow undulating. Inside, the three conspirators plotted the courses of kings. Tyrion cleared his throat. "Our intelligence indicates that the Reach Lords will attend your tournament in relief and curiosity. But the Rock, Tywin's old remnants, are still swayed by Lannister gold. They will require a demonstration of our seriousness." "Now, a show of force," Varys nodded. "The rumor mill is our ally. Let's slip that two of our dragons, Scorch and Wing, will circle the skies above Casterly Rock as we must negotiate." Tyrion sighed. "Scorch and Wing are still too young to leave the cavern. If they falter," Varys held up a finger, "I will orchestrate a staged flyby. Dragons soar, lords of the West tremble, debts forgiven." He turned to Daenerys. "Your Grace, should we press northward on Harrenhal, where the forces of House Tully yet linger?" She leaned forward. "The trident still waters my soul, but the Tullys are torn. Sansa's word may suffice." She looked to Tyrion. "Better to win the north by oaths and marriage than to wade in blood." He nodded gravely. "Always the cleaner option, though cleaner seldom means peaceful." Varys studied the fire, embers drifting like glowing insects. "Then let the tourney begin at Highgarden in 3 weeks. Storms end in 6, Winterfell in 8. In the meantime, I will send envoys to Dorne and the Iron Islands. Both hold grudges, but both may be placated with concessions." "Nandawar." The queen clasped her hands. "Send out the ravens at dawn. Let every lord know that Archon Valerios rides west with the promises of a true Targaryen, not a pretender." Behind them, the flicker of torchlight cast long shadows on the walls. Shadows of dragons and spiders intertwined. The realm was poised on the knife edge between unity and ruin. Over the next fortnight, Varys' machinations spun outward like a spider's web. Ravens bearing his seal winged across the 7 kingdoms. Proclamations of tournaments, promises of betrothals, veiled threats of dragon wings. In the citadels of Old Town, activists debated the merits of a hidden Targaryen heir. In the smoky warrens of the Iron Isles, reavers cried for a share in the spoils of a dragon queen. In the sulfur-damp holds of Dorne, Sunspear lords weighed alliances of fire and sand. At Highgarden, preparations swelled. Thousands of tents and house colors sprouted like wildflowers across the verdant fields. Roses bloomed in stadium glory, while smiths hammered banners of dragon and rose side by side. Varys arrived at dawn, cloaked in rose-tinted silks embroidered with black dragons, flanked by a small company of knights bearing his personal standard. He rode with Sir Garth at his side, the spymaster's nerves a whirl beneath practiced calm. The tourney's first day dawned hot, a thin haze mingling scent of dew and dust. Lances shattered on shields, banners snapped like flags of war. Yet as some lords' tilts ended in victory, the talk among the crowd centered always on the Spider Prince, the eunuch born of dragon's blood, weaving a network of promises and dread. Whispers tracked his every glance. He thanked that night too effusively. What favor does he seek? Did you see him remove that rose? No, a dragon beneath it. 2 maesters approach him daily. What counsel do they give? What counsel do they give? Varys smiled at the speculation. He drank rare arbor gold, glimpsed the queen's envoys in the stands, and dispatched his own riders with updates each hour. By midday's end, Rowan and Oakhart had pledged banners. Tyrell relatives cheered. The Count of Tarlis, Beesbury's and other houses swelled to half the field. Only Fossaway tottered, their banner barely visible on a distant hill. He left the lists that evening under cover of a false moon, a draped lantern procession that concealed the number of guards, and rode with a small escort to Fossaway's manse. There he met Lady Margaery's younger cousin, Lord Loras Fossaway, in a hall adorned with gilded honeycomb motifs. The young lord, lean and sleek as his house's symbol, studied Varys with hawk eyes. "You seek my fealty," Loras said, voice smooth as summer wine. "But why should House Fossaway bend the knee to a secret child of the dragon? One who has served hidden all his life." Varys inclined. "Because the realm stirs on the brink of death by division. A queen riding north with Dothraki behind her. A spider prince weaving hidden plots. Yet the crown does not seek vengeance, but peace. I offer Fossaway restored lands in the Reach south. The vineyards long held by the Lannisters, now return to those who till the soil. Your house will rule the fertile lowlands, raise wild roses in summer, and prosper under Targaryen protection." Now, the young lord's eyebrows rose. "And you, what does the Spider Prince ask in return?" Varys' smile was grave. "Your house oaths, sworn openly before all lords. Attend the Winterfell ceremony, witness the betrothal, and pledge loyalty to the queen. That is all I ask." Loras considered. He paced the floor, boots clicking on marble. Finally he nodded. "I accept, but know this. If you fail, your promises will lie as cold as dragon bones in the sands of Dorne." Varys bowed. "I would not have it otherwise." Thus, by the closing of Highgarden's lists, the banners of the Reach crowned the field. Fossaway's standard now flew alongside them. Word spread swiftly. Even the Rock's merchants whispered that Casterly Rock negotiated with the Spider's emissary over wine and coin. Storm's End prepared for the warding ceremony. Winterfell's Godswood was cleared of snow to welcome a child thrice blessed. Yet with each victory, Varys felt the coils tighten. Rivalries deepened. Secret councils plotted countermeasures. And the ever-present specter of Lannister revenge loomed. Back at Dragonstone, Daenerys unleashed Drogon's roar across the Bay of Crabs as a symbolic show. 50 of her unsullied marched the beach in formation, sun glinting on steel. Yet neither dragon nor soldier crossed the sea. The holdfasts of the West trembled at the echo alone. And beneath it all, in the silent racks of the dungeons below the Red Keep, Varys' old network still worked. Ponds in Flea Bottom rippled with bribes. Forgotten tunnels under the streets carried whispers to the Iron Bank. Servants at court carried small daggers of poison to those who balked. His web was vast, woven through the souls of every peasant and prince alike. But above all, Varys remembered the double-edged nature of secrets. He had revealed his own, torn from him in a theater of power. And now he exposed others. Should these lords betray his trust, their hidden sins would be laid bare. Bastard children, unpaid debts, pacts with pirates. He would unleash their shadows as arrows in the war of loyalty. As the summer solstice approached, he stood once more in Daenerys' solar. Maps unfurled, letters stacked like towers. The tide of war and peace surged and receded upon these parchments. The queen entered, a vision of frost and flame, and stood beside him, hand on his shoulder. "Tell me, Varys," she said softly, "do you believe the realm will unite under me? Or will the wheel break in more places than it binds?" He looked to the west, where the sea met sky in a thin silver line. "A spider's web holds by tension and design, your grace. So long as each strand bears weight equally, the whole endures. If one strand, one alley snaps, we risk unraveling. That is why we must not rest until every lord's vow is sealed in blood and bond." She nodded. "Then we ride forth. Let the Stormland's wind carry our banners, the North snow bear witness, and the Reach flowers bless our path. And let those who would betray us tremble at the sight of a spider revealed, no longer hidden, but free to spin the fate of kings." He bowed his head. "As you command, Queen of Meereen, breaker of chains, mother of dragons, and heir of the dragon's line." Outside, a lone raven took flight, bearing the next missive to Winterfell, and the world tilted once more on its precarious axis of fire and shadows. In the days to come, the realm would see whether the Spider Prince's web could hold the weight of thrones, or whether, at last, the wheel would shatter beneath the dragon's roar. "Oh, whoa." Varys rode north at dawn, the chill of early summer still clinging to the mists that curled above the narrow roads leading out of Highgarden. His small escort, 50 knights sworn to House Tyrell, bore the banners of rose and dragon side by side. Each standard fluttered in the pale light, a testament both to ambition and to the fragile promise of unity. He rode at their head, cloak of black silk, embroidered with red three-headed dragons swirling around his lean form, like living flame. By midday they reached the high hills overlooking the Stormlands, the road winding through rocky passes where the wind tore at leather and cloth alike. Varys dismounted at the foot of a ruined watchtower, its stones blackened by centuries of salt and wind. There, amidst the scattered sentries of the Stormlands host, he summoned Lord Gendry Baratheon to meet him. The young lord arrived astride a massive destrier, his features already hardened by years of leadership that none had expected of the bastard smith's boy. Archon Valerios, Gendry greeted, bowing with honest reserve. The roads grow perilous beyond this fen. I have readied 50 more knights to guide you to Storm's End. Varys inclined his head. Your loyalty humbles me, my lord. Storm's End stands ready, I trust. Bendy. Gendry's faint smile flickered across his strong jaw. We have prepared the great hall and set aside the chamber where the warding ceremony will take place. Yet I must confess, some among my bannermen question the wisdom of binding their fate to a secret prince. They remember well the day Robert marched to claim the Iron Throne, and they fear another Targaryen hand upon the hilt of power. Varys rested a hand on Gendry's forearm. Fear is a prudent master, but not a wise one. We shall temper theirs with ceremony and pageantry, with joy and with hope. He gestured toward the distant silhouette of Storm's End, rising like a black sentinel against a pale sky. Look upon your ancestral seat. See how it stands unbroken, battered yet unbowed. It awaits your oath, and when your knights swear by your life and honor, they bind themselves to something greater than any individual. Gendry's gaze wavered between pride and doubt. At length he spoke. Lead on, Archon. I will ride at your side. They departed, under the banner of an alliance newly forged. Along the way, Varys's mind worked through the details. The prayers to the storm god that would accompany the ceremony, the favors to be granted to knights whose loyalty might otherwise waver, and the letters to Lady Sansa Stark awaiting dispatch to Winterfell. Every element had to be perfect, for even the slightest misstep could tip the fragile balance toward rebellion. That evening they reached the docks of Blackwater Bay, where a small contingent of Daenerys, unsullied, stood guard. The air tasted of salt and seaweed, and the cries of gulls echoed across the water. Gendry paused at the edge of the quay, running a hand through his dark hair. I have never been on a ship, he admitted, voice low. I fear the sea as much as I fear the dragons. Varys smiled with gentle reassurance. Fear is the mark of mortality, my lord. Even the greatest warrior feels its chill. Yet you have faced foes in battle without favor, without sight, without mercy, and stood tall. Trust in your skill, and in the Queen's will. Gendry nodded, though he remained tense. The wooden gangplank creaked beneath their boots as they boarded a small cog bound for Storm's End. On the deck the sailors moved with practiced ease, hauling ropes and adjusting sails to catch the evening breeze. The ship lurched beneath them, its timbers groaning like giants waking from slumber. Varys clutched the rail, dark eyes fixed on the distant castle. He felt the tug of two worlds, the secure stone of Storm's End awaiting him, and the uncertain waves that threatened to overturn every plan. When the cog slipped into the storm-racked mouth of the castle's harbor, torches flickered along the walls, guiding them like beacons of hope. The massive iron gate swung open, a groan of ancient steel, and they passed into a courtyard thronged with banners and torches. Varys noted the scars upon the gate, pockmarks where siege engines had battered the walls in ancient wars, and felt a kinship with this fortress born of conflict yet still standing. Inside the great hall, long tables were set with pewter dishes and carved goblets. A dais at the far end rose 3 steps above the floor, and atop it hung the stag's antlers of House Baratheon, tines gilded in gold. The walls were hung with tapestries depicting storms and hunts, while braziers glowed at intervals along the stone. Gendry led Varys forward, and the knights fell silent, their armor catching the torchlight in dull glimmers. Varys stepped to the center of the hall, the hush pressing upon him like a weight. He had rehearsed this moment countless times in his mind, yet the reality still held the power to still his breath. He looked upon the lances and the faces that peered down at him. Seasoned men-at-arms, squire boys whose cheeks still bore the smoothness of youth, and banners of houses sworn to Gendry's blood. "Lords and knights of the Stormlands," Varys began, voice clear and steady. "We stand in a hall forged by stone and storm, a fortress unmatched in its strength. Yet your walls, no matter how thick, cannot guard against division. No rampart can withstand the splinter of distrust among men whose blades should defend realms rather than cleave them." A ripple of agreement passed through the assembly. Varys continued, "Gendry Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, has invited you here not as subjects beneath a crown, but as allies bound by a shared oath. To unite the Seven Kingdoms is to forge a realm of peace and prosperity, no longer torn by greed or vengeance, but held together by honor and loyalty." He felt the weight of every gaze upon him, then lifted the Queen's letter high for all to see. Daenerys Targaryen sends her greeting and her promise, that no lord who swears this oath shall be impoverished for his loyalty, nor his family diminished for his faith. Her blood, our blood, will protect yours. But you must stand and bear witness. Nenneseger. At his words, Gendry stepped onto the dais, unsheathing his ancestral sword, Storm's Edge. He raised it high, the steel gleaming in torchlight. "Knights of the Stormlands," he called, voice ringing like a hammer on anvil. "By this blade I swear fealty to Daenerys Targaryen, my liege queen, to defend her claim with my life, and to uphold her laws as I would my own honor." A chant of assent rose up as the knights, one by one, shouted their names and knelt before the sword. Varys watched as the hall's energy shifted, old grudges forgotten, young hearts swelling with purpose, and the cold despair of war replaced by the fire of unity. When the last voice faded, he felt a tremor of exhilaration. As the ceremony concluded, Gendry embraced Varys at the foot of the dais. "You were right, Archon," he murmured. "They needed more than promises. They needed to feel the weight of their own oath." Varys inclined his head. "And they felt it well. Now the Stormlands stand with us." That night, they dined in the banquet hall, the groans of tons and flagons filling the air. Music played upon lutes and pipes. Laughter echoed from long wooden tables laden with venison, bread, and flagons of sweet wine. Varys sat beside Gendry, who to his surprise made orders to spare no expense for the smallest squire. The young lord's heart had softened in victory, and Varys saw in him the spark of true leadership. Yet even amidst celebration, Varys' mind turned to Winterfell. Sansa Stark remained a fulcrum upon which the fate of the North, and thus the entire realm, would balance. He would ride at dawn, leaving Gendry with his new lords, and press northward through woods and plains, across rivers swollen by snowmelt and past villages that still bore the memory of Bolton cruelty. The Godswood of Winterfell awaited, gray and somber beneath the summer skies, a place where oaths were most sacred. He retired early, seeking the solitude of the ramparts, where the wind played among the stones. There, he unrolled the raven's parchment once more, smoothing his fingers along Daenerys' seal. In the flicker of torchlight, he penned his next dispatch. "Sansa Stark, Lady of Winterfell and Warden of the North, I journey to your gates, with the blessings of your queen and the solemn intent to offer you a bond cemented in blood and honor. Bring forth your daughter and your stoutest lords. Let the gods witness this union of North and Dragonflame. Archon Valerios." He sealed the letter and handed it to the Master-at-Arms, who promised swift passage southward by Raven. Then Varys climbed the wall to watch the moon crawl across the sky. He felt the weight of every promise he had made and every oath he had guided. Each was a thread in the tapestry of the realm's future, a tapestry he had spun with cunning and with courage. But he knew that even the strongest web could fray if one strand was cut. and he prayed that none of the lords he had shepherded would turn against the queen he served. The road to Winterfell lay north through the Neck, a region of tangled marshlands and narrow causeways. Varys traveled with only 20 unsullied guards, believing that stealth and discretion would serve him better than pomp. They moved by night, evading tolls and avoiding the main thoroughfares. The marsh reeds whispered in the wind, and the mists clung to their cloaks like ghostly fingers. One's later arrival at Last Hearth, the seat of House Dustin, provided Varys with a momentary refuge. The ancient fortress spired towers of gray-white stone, set upon a hill of black basalt. There, he met Lady Mira Reed, whose dark hair and alert eyes bespoke a lineage of fierce loyalty. She received him warily, noting the sigil of dragon among the roses on his cloak. "Archon Valerios," he greeted, bowing with cautious respect. "I have heard word of your coming. My lady mother and I have debated whether this Targaryen prince is boon or bane to the north." Varys inclined his head. "Lady Reed, the north has suffered much. War, betrayal, the cruelty of Bolton lords. I offer peace bound by bonds stronger than any steel, oaths sworn before the old gods themselves. Will you guide me to Winterfell?" Mira studied him, eyes narrowing. "I will guide you, but I will not serve as herald to your cause. The gods must hear your words, not mine." She turned, beckoning him to follow along a narrow trail through moss-hung trees. "Come, I will bring you to the Godswood where Lady Sansa awaits in council with her bannermen." They walked in silence, the only sound the hush of reeds and the distant cry of marsh birds. Midnight clouds scudded overhead, moonlight filtered through branches like pale silk. Varys reflected on the path he had taken. The secrets he had revealed, the alliances he had forged, the dangers he had deflected. Each step brought him closer to the moment of reckoning, swearing the north to a queen born across the narrow sea, whose dragons still slept beneath volcanic stone. At the edge of the Godswood, ancient weirwoods stood sentinel, their white bark carved with the faces of silent watchers whose hollow eyes gazed forever into eternity. The ground was carpeted with pale leaves, and in the center lay a fallen log, worn smooth where lords and ladies had once knelt. There, Lady Sansa Stark and her council awaited. Lord Royce of Runestone, Lady Manderly's envoy from White Harbor, and the silent sentinel of House Flint. Sansa rose as he approached, her auburn hair braided into complex knots, her cloak of direwolf fur clasped at her throat. She offered him her sharp gray gaze, measuring him like a blade's trial by touch. "Archon Valerios," she said, voice cool as winter's first frost. "You come to our sacred grove bearing a queen's promise. Speak your terms." He bowed deeply. "Lady Sansa, you hold the north in trust, not for any king's whim, but for the people who dwell in its mountains and its plains. Daenerys Targaryen offers her friendship, and that of her dragons, to protect your holdfasts and your sons, to guard your laws and your customs. In return, your daughter Eleni, betrothed henceforth to the Prince of Dragon's blood, will be raised among her kin, tutored in both your traditions and the greater world, until she—" A gasp rippled through the council. Lord Royce laid a hand on his sword hilt. Sansa held up a hand for silence. "You ask a great thing of me, to promise my child to a queen whose bloodline ruled this realm long before the first Stark set foot in the icy north. What guarantee do I have that this bond will last, that my daughter will not be raised a stranger in her own home?" Varys met her gaze steadily. "By the old gods and the new, by the Seven Realms and the Iron Bank's contract, Daenerys swears that no harm shall come to Elaine of Winterfell. Should the queen break this oath, she must surrender her crown and answer to the lords of the north for every wrong done. I, Valerios of the blood of the dragon, stake my life upon this promise." "Down?" Sansa's eyes flicked to the faces around her. Royce, whose scars bespoke a lifetime of battles. The Manderly envoy, whose white mustache quivered with suppressed emotion. Flint, silent yet fierce as a wolf. They weighed the words, the solemnity of the place, the promise of peace after years of suffering. At length Sansa nodded. "Then let us seal this bond." She moved to the heart tree, knelt upon the fallen log, and laid a hand upon its carved face. "By the old gods, and by the seven above, I swear to honor this pact between House Stark and House Targaryen, that my daughter may live in peace, and that the North shall stand with the Iron Throne so long as this promise is upheld." Varys knelt beside her, placing his hand upon hers and pressing it to the wood's pale bark. "By the blood of my house, and by the name of the dragon, I swear this oath true." The wind sighed through the branches, and the council bowed their heads. In that moment, the North lent its strength to the Queen, and the spider's web stretched to the furthest reaches of the realm. Dawn found Varys alone in the Godswood, mist drifting like ghosts around the weirwoods. He stood and brushed his knees, feeling the weight of every promise he had shepherded. He had bound Reach and Stormlands. He had swayed Fossaway and the Rock, and now he had tamed the fierce heart of the North. Yet his work was not done. Beyond lay Dorne and the Iron Islands, two peoples whose pride and ancient grudges ran deeper than any oaths he had yet secured. He departed Winterfell under a sky painted in the first hints of sunrise. His journey would carry him southward along the Roserad, and then westward across the sands of Dorne. He resolved to travel in disguise once more, a simple merchant, trading robes of Dornish silk for ironwood staves, carrying no banner save that of a traveling salesman. In each holdfast he would meet with princes and lords, offering them small gifts and larger promises, weaving them ever tighter into the Targaryen web. But beneath his calm exterior, Varys knew that each step carried peril. There were those who would see the realm sundered by the old hatred between dragon and sand, between Ironborn and mainlanders. He would need every ounce of cunning and every whisper in every ear to maintain the fragile unity he had nearly achieved. And so he rode on, the spider spinning his far-reaching web, each strand glinting in dawn's early light, waiting for the moment when the full tapestry of the Seven Kingdoms would be bound at last in fire, blood, and unbreakable oath. A.K. Varys rode south from Winterfell with the hush of the Godswood still ringing in his ears. The journey carried him through the Riverlands, where spring floods swelled the Trident, and the earth lay soft beneath his horse's hooves. He slipped through crossing gates under the guise of a traveling trader, leather satchels at his saddle bearing samples of fine cloaks, Dornish brocade, highborn silk from Lies, each marked with a simple merchant's sigil. His escort numbered but a handful of mounted men, all sworn to secrecy. Rumor of a secret prince's passage must be whispered, never proclaimed. As he traversed the gentle hills of the Reach, he reflected on the fragile tapestry he had woven. The Reach in bloom beneath Highgarden's rose-covered walls, the hammer of Storm's Edge raised in Storm's End's cavernous hall, the ancient oaths of Winterfell sealed beneath white weirwoods. Each step had bound another great house to Daenerys' cause, yet each knot in the web risked fraying should betrayal strike. His task now, to bring the sun-baked lands of Dorne and the harsh isles of the Ironborn into the fold. Crossing the dubious neutrality of the Riverlands, Varys ventured into the lands of the Crannogman, slipping past the Swamp Lords without incident. At Moat Cailin, the crumbling ruins of the old castle stood sentinel over the neck, its broken towers a testament to centuries of neglect. He skirted its shadowed moat, offering coins to ferrymen who spoke little and read nothing, for their watchfulness ended where the pence began. Thus he reached the open road that led south into the Reach once more, where the scent of newly turned earth and the cry of harvesters greeted him. Arriving at the crossroads near Oldstones, Varys paused beneath the gnarled branches of a solitary oak. He recalled the whispers that had long circulated of Oldstone's tragic past, how the ghosts of its lost lords wandered halls still. He left a small offering of coins in the hollow of the oak's trunk, an act of respect to unquiet spirits, and pressed on. By the seventh dawn after leaving Winterfell, he reached the Dornish marches. There the air hung thick with heat, and the land seemed a tapestry woven from sun-bleached grasses and dusty red earth. Varys shed his furs for a travel-worn tunic of light linen, dyed the color of wheat, and wrapped a fine scarf about his head to shield against the glare. He rode into Sandstone, the frontier fortress of Dorne, where Prince Doran's lieutenants held court in the shadow of serrated mountains. Under the cover of dusk, Varys sought an audience with the Master of Whisperers in Prince Doran's service, Sir Varyo Sand, whose lineage of Dornish bastards had risen to favor through cunning and subtlety rather than sword. In the candlelit courtyard beneath banners of sun and spear, Varys presented himself as a Braavosi merchant with samples of Targaryen cloth, an odd but enticing item in Dornish markets. Ser Vario's lean features curved into a blade-like grin as he studied the merchant's bolts of scarlet and black silk. "Highborn cloth for a highborn price," he murmured, dragging a gloved finger along the fabric. "Tell me, merchant, from what hand do these patterns truly spring?" Varys gave a measured bow. "My lord, I deal in rarities. This cloth was woven at Dragonstone, commissioned by a foreign queen whose name whispers through Braavos and beyond." He paused, gauging the Sand Knight's expression. "I thought it might find favor here in Dorne, where such exotic wares please the sons and daughters of Sunspear." The knight's eyes gleamed. "Then you must know of the queen's cause." He waved to a nearby brazier whose flame leapt at his gesture. "Speak plainly. Are you her herald, or her spy?" Varys' lips curved in a gentle smile. "I serve no master but commerce and truth, my lord. Yet commerce thrives most when realms find peace. I come offering both coin and counsel." He retrieved a sealed letter from his satchel. Daenerys' personal missive, wax-stamped with her dragon seal, and handed it to Varyo Sand. "Let your Prince Doran read her words. She offers alliance, marriage bonds, and respect for Dornish customs. In return, she seeks only fellowship and fealty." Ser Varyo unsealed the letter, reading by the torchlight. His jaw tightened as he digested each line. Promises to honor the Martell's autonomy, to intermarry Targaryen princes and Dornish lords, to lift the embargoes on Dornish wine and spices. When he finished, he looked up, expression inscrutable. "Your queen's words ring courteous, but we Martells have learned caution from bitter memory. What guarantee binds her promises beyond ink and wax?" Varys inclined, voice solemn. "By the same oaths sworn before Weirwood and Sept, by the blood of my house and the word of my queen, I stake my life upon her honor. Should she falter, let her dragons burn her throne rather than let Dornish blood be spilled in vain." Dendoa. The knight's gaze pierced Varys. Then at last he nodded once. "I will carry your words to Sunspear." He raised a slender chalice. "To a careful peace." Varys clinked his own cup against the knight's, and the Dornish sunset glowed like fire upon their gauntleted hands. While Ser Varyo rode east to carry the proposal to Prince Doran, Varys slipped away in the night, bound for the Stepstones. There, beyond Dorne's eastern reaches, lay the pirate havens of the Jade Sea, places where no crown held sway, except that of the strongest blade. It was here that he hoped to win the Ironborn, who roamed those waters in reef-built castles and sea-torn islands, exacting tribute from shipping lanes and sea lanes alike. He sailed aboard a modest cog, its timbers leering beneath a coat of salt. The crew were Iron Islands men, broad-shouldered, sun-scarred, with hair as dark as spilled blood and eyes as hard as barnacled rock. He presented himself as Varso of the Narrow Sea, offering coin to speak with their captains. By lanternlight in the cramped galley, he traded tales of storms and dragons, of riches to be found in a united realm, and of a queen who rewarded loyalty beyond measure. One night, as the cog cleared the Shadow Tower and entered the reefs off the coast of 10 Towers, the sea glittered with phosphorescent life. The crew sang a mournful dirge, their voices low and guttural, speaking of runes and drowned gods. Varys listened from beneath his hood, letting the cadence of their voices wash over him. When he stepped onto the gangplank of a pirate cog moored alongside, he gave the signal he had arranged. A small pouch of silver stags tossed onto the deck. The pirates fell quiet, their iron eyes narrowing. "I come with a proposition," Varys called, voice carried over the gentle lapping of waves. "A queen from across the sea seeks to bind kingdoms together. She offers you ships, safe ports, and trade rights in every harbor from King's Landing to the Stormlands. In return, and a share in the bounty of a stable realm." None. The pirate captain, tall, one-eyed, his beard knotted with the bones of small fish, strode forward, jingling keys at his belt. He spat over the railing, amber and foul. And why would a woman of flame and dragon care for the likes of us? We sail free. We answer to no throne. Varys smiled, showing no fear. Because even dragons need allies at sea. A realm that tolerates pirates' lives in fear of every shoreline. Yet a realm that welcomes them with open arms and coin thrives. Imagine ports where your ships find full holds and safe harbor, where men by oar and sail are honored as much as knights on horseback. Daddy. The captain stared at him, then laughed. A harsh, cracking sound. Come aboard, merchant. We will see if your words hold truth. He gestured to his lieutenants. Bring him to our council. Within the pirate stronghold of 10 towers, Varys found himself in a circular hall carved from the white rock of the island. Braziers glowed in iron braziers shaped like krakens, and chairs hewn from ship's timbers formed a ring around a low table. Around it sat a dozen iron-born captains, their weathered faces lit by torchlight and suspicion. Varys bowed low. Captains of the Iron Fleet, I stand before you as a simple merchant, but my words bear the weight of a queen's promise. She seeks to end the endless raiding that has bled your people dry, to bring you into the fold of law and profit. In her realm, no man need steal to feed his family. No child need cower from reavers. Serve her, and you become lords of law and trade, not mere thieves of opportunity. One captain, a woman with hair braided in iron filaments, slapped her palm on the table. You promise much. Yet how do we know gold promised is not gold frozen? The isle is bone and wind. A throne stands far from here. She leaned forward. If we swear to your queen, where do we live? On some rock far from the Iron Islands. Will she leave our customs intact? Our right of reaving? Our right of salt wives? Varys raised a hand. Your customs remain. Only unwise pillaging, attacks on neutral realms, will cease. In return, you gain ports across the narrow sea as safe havens, shares in trade caravans, and seats at the table of the realm's markets. You will live on your islands. You will keep your salt wives and your longships. You will gain more honor than any if you stand as her naval power, not as outlaws. Then a tense hush fell. Then the one-eyed captain cleared his throat and spoke. We will consider, but know that if she betrays us, we will burn her fleet and drown her banners beneath the salt. He looked at Varys. Is that your queen's vow too? Varys met his gaze steadily. By dragon's fire and iron promise, yes. Should she fail, let her own lords raise her holdfasts to ash. He turned slowly, inclining toward each captain in turn. You have my word. She has my life. Will you sail under her banners? A long moment passed. Then the iron-born captains each tapped the hilt of their swords on the table, one by one. A pact sealed in steel and oath. The braziers flared, and the smell of salt and smoke filled the hall as they raised their voices in the black wind's blessing. Varys departed 10 towers under a sky heavy with clouds, the promise of storms above. He had woven the final strand of his web. The Ironborn, the Sand Snakes, the hard-backed lords of the Reach, the stout knights of the Stormlands, and the proud houses of the North. All that remained was the final gathering at King's Landing, a summit under the red roofs of the Red Keep, where each ruler would come bearing vows and gifts, where the Queen's hand would be extended in crown and bond. As he sailed south on a merchant cog once more, Varys looked out across the endless gray-green sea and felt the weight of what he had accomplished. Soon the lords of Westeros would assemble, and history would be written anew. By dragon and by spider, by oath and by pen, with fire uniting a realm long rent by war. And in that reckoning, Varys would stand not as a whisper in the dark, but as a prince of dragons and shadows, whose hidden truth had shaped the fate of kings. Varys's cog slipped through the mists of Blackwater Bay before dawn, carrying him and a handful of trusted envoys toward the red-cloaked towers of King's Landing. As the dark silhouette of the city emerged, alabaster and crimson against the pale fingers of morning light, a sense of portent gripped him. All his careful weaving of alliances, all his whispered bargains and iron-forged oaths, would soon be tested beneath the vaulted halls of the Red Keep. He disembarked at a private quay, an ancient jetty long since reclaimed by court servants, and was met by three of Daenerys' most loyal scouts. Sir Jorah the Andal, his eyes wary but resolute, Grey Worm, silent sentinel of unwavering steel, and Missandei, her expression grave beneath the pale dawn flower of Meereen. They led him through hidden passages that twisted beneath the city streets, past slums and sewers where beggars knelt to him as a prince in exile, and finally into the cool, torchlit corridors of the keep's western wing. In the audience chamber, repurposed for a convergence of crowned heads, the benches were already filling. The banners of the great houses hung side by side. The crimson rose of Highgarden, the black stag of Storm's End on blue, the direwolf of Winterfell upon white, the sun and spear of Sunspear, and, even more startling, the kraken of the Iron Islands, its tentacles curling against a stormy sea. Below each banner, lords and ladies murmured among themselves, clad in their finest silks and furs, swords at their hips and jewels at their throats. Their faces were masked in polite reserve, but their eyes flared with the old hunger for power. Varys paused at the threshold, gathering the shard of courage that made mortals and monarchs alike stand tall in the face of fate. He moved forward, each step a summons of the bonds he had forged, each measured breath a prayer that no hidden dagger would find him before his voice could carry the Queen's ultimatum. As he reached the center of the floor's patterned marble, the chamber fell still. Queensguard in white plate lined the dais. At its pinnacle sat Daenerys Targaryen, robed in dragon-scale green, her silver gold hair cascading like a river of metal. Beside her, Tyrion Lannister held a folded scroll in one hand, and in the other, the small bronze scepter of hand of the Queen. The three dragon eggs. Shells of obsidian, pearl, and ebon glass rested upon pedestals to her right. Silent witnesses to her claim. Daenerys inclined her head as Varys knelt before her. "Rise, Archon Valerios," she said, voice clear as hammered steel. "You have brought the 7 kingdoms to my hall. Speak then, and let the realm hear your truth." "Damn, Eversu." He rose, robes whispering like shadows about him. He cleared his throat and let his eyes pass slowly over each face in the hall, committing the lines of hope and trepidation to memory. "Your Grace, honored lords and ladies, sons and daughters of the great houses, welcome to the dawn of a new age. No longer shall Westeros be torn by war, nor its people shackled by fear of betrayal. Today, beneath these banners, we stand united by the blood of dragons, the honor of knights, and the faith of gods." "Da." A murmur rippled through the assembly, some startled, some skeptical. Varys raised his hands, silencing them with the authority of conviction. "I speak not as a usurper's tool, but as one born of your own soil and exiled by your enemies. I speak as prince of this realm, returned not to seize by force, but to bind by oath. Each of you has pledged your houses to the Queen. Highgarden, Storm's End, Winterfell, Sunspear, the Iron Islands, and soon the Vale, the Reach, even the shadowed lands beyond the wall. Now you come to seal these pledges before all, that none may deny their truth." "Ah." He gestured to the folded scroll in Tyrion's hand. "The hand of the Queen will present the Treaty of 7 Crowns, a charter of unity, terms of trade and marriage, protections of customs and faiths, the recognition of ancient rights and new laws. Read it aloud, Lord Hand." Tyrion rose, clearing his throat. "By the authority invested in me by Queen Daenerys of House Targaryen, Mother of Dragons, Protector of the Realm, I declare the Treaty of 7 Crowns sealed and enacted as of this day. Its terms are as follows." For the next hour, Tyrion read each clause in turn. Guarantees of religious autonomy, land grants to houses newly swayed, oaths of parliamentary consultation, the founding of a new Council of Lords to sit at Dragonstone before every harvest. As he spoke, voices rose and fell in assent. Nods whispered agreements, the click of seals being broken and pressed to parchment. When the scroll was fully read, Daenerys rose, lifting her hand for silence. "By my right as queen and by the oaths sworn here, let this treaty stand eternal. Those who break it shall face the wrath of dragon and crowned king alike." She gestured to Varys. "Archon Valerios, your work is done. Speak with me if you will, for now you have earned the place you once hid from." Applause thundered through the hall, tentative at first, then swelling into a roaring tide as each house's banner-bearers stamped their feet in acclaim. Varys exhaled, feeling the weight of countless lives settle upon his shoulders. The spider's web had held. As the crowd poured toward the dais in congratulations and counsel, Varys stepped aside to join Daenerys and Tyrion. Tyrion's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Well spun, my friend. Few could have gathered such lords beneath one roof without spilling more blood than ink." Daenerys placed a hand upon Varys's arm. "Without you, this would have been impossible. You have proven that truth, once revealed, can bind stronger than any chain." She looked out over the assembled lords. Some bowed in homage, others gripped in heated debate. "Now begins the real work. To govern justly, to keep faith with our words, and to see the 7 kingdoms prosper as one." Varys bowed low. "I stand ready, your grace, as prince and as servant, to guide the realm in peace or in war, whichever fate demands." She smiled, a rare, unguarded curve of her lips. "Then let us walk this path together." Together they descended the dais, stepping into the tide of swirling nobles, each bearing gifts, oaths, and pleas. Amid the din of celebration and counsel, Varys felt the steady hum of hope beneath the roar. A promise that a hidden spider could, at last, weave unity from the frayed ends of a broken realm. And as the sun climbed higher over King's Landing, its light gleamed upon banners, jewels, and the silent dragon eggs, heralding the dawn of a new era. Varys rose early the next morning, the great hush of King's Landing still lingering in his bones, as he made his way through the silent corridors of the Red Keep. The treaty had been sealed, the lords had sworn their oaths. Yet already he felt the stirrings of restlessness, echoes of ambition and resentment that no parchment could wholly bind. In the pale dawn light, he paused before a tall window overlooking Blackwater Bay, watching gulls wheel above the dark water, and steeled himself for the tasks ahead. He first sought out Tyrion Lannister in the Hand Solar. The dwarf was already at his desk, hunched over ledgers and petitions from across the realm. Appeals from Highgarden for relief after raising their tourney. Complaints from Storm's End about border skirmishes. A delicate missive from Sunspear's council regarding the preservation of Dornish custom. Tyrion looked up with a wry smile. "You look as though you've just swallowed a dragon egg," he quipped. "Tea." Varys accepted the cup, savoring the warmth. "We have a kingdom to govern now," he said softly. "The binding is done, but the weaving, I fear, is only beginning." Tyrion nodded, acknowledging the weight of the task. "Power is like wildfire," he said. "It burns brightest just after the spark, and just before it consumes its fuel." He tapped his quill against the ledger. "We must channel it, Varys. Build institutions that outlast any one queen or one spider." Then, they spoke long into the morning, drafting the structure of a new council. Representatives of each great house, clergy of the 7, the old gods' septas, merchants of the free cities, an assembly to advise the throne and check its excesses. By the time candles guttered low, they had fashioned bylaws that balanced power without strangling authority. Next, Varys descended to the kitchens, where Grey Worm and Missandei oversaw the distribution of grain to King's Landing's poorest districts. A gesture requested by Daenerys to cement goodwill among the common folk. Amid stacks of loaves and casks of ale, Varys watched as freed men and women swarmed the courtyard, clamoring for bread. Their gratitude, raw and unvarnished, reminded him that treaties meant little if the people still starved. "Ensure the grain reaches Flea Bottom and the rat catches alleys," Varys instructed a messenger. No district left empty-handed. He handed a small coin pouch to a young woman with a newborn at her breast. Her tears and gratitude cut deeper than any oath sworn by a lord in his marble hall. By midday he returned to the council chamber, where envoys from the Vale and the Reach argued over port tariffs. Dornish emissaries insisted on excise exemptions for spices. Ironborn captains pressed for a share of customs duties on shipping lanes. Varys mediated each dispute, invoking the treaty's clauses and the Queen's vision. A realm united in prosperity, not divided by greed. Yet he sensed fault lines, old rivalries reborn, whispering beneath polite facades. That afternoon he found Daenerys in the Dragon Pit, studying blueprints for a new sept in King's Landing, a towering spire to the Seven, built alongside a grove of weirwoods imported from Winterfell. She traced her fingertip over the sketches. "Ace where Septon and Skincanger might both feel at home," she said. "Where faiths converge, not clash." Varys inclined. "A fitting monument to our unity." He hesitated, then added, "Your Grace, some among the faith of the Seven worry we move too fast. They fear a sept and a grove too close together." "Dai." She exhaled, gaze steady on stone. "We must show them that faith can evolve without erasing tradition. Build the sept at the forest's edge. Let the weirwoods shelter it, as the old gods watch over the new." He bowed. "As you will, Queen of Dragons and Ambassador of Gods." In the days that followed, intrigue ripened like fruit. A minor revolt flared in the Westerlands, Lannisport's merchants chafing under new trade regulations. Word reached Varys that a faction of Lannister retainers, still loyal to Casterly ambition, plotted to seize the port and ransom it back to the crown. Varys dispatched spies to infiltrate the guilds, bribed captains to patrol the harbor, and arranged a quiet meeting with Lord Tytos Lannister, the young scion newly sworn to Daenerys, reminding him that his family's future lay not with rebellion, but with cooperation. In the Reach, a Harvest Lord balked at ceding his share of taxes for the new Realm Council. Varys arranged for Lady Olenna Tyrell's kin to offer him a prestigious seat on that very council in exchange for compliance. When the Lord refused, citing pride, Varys let it be known that Storm's End would pursue a land grant on his borders, an exorbitant gift unless he agreed. Pride yielded to pragmatism, and the Lord's assent arrived that night in a formal Ravensong. Yet the most delicate task lay in the Iron Islands, where the captains grudgingly honored their pledges but raided small fishing villages in defiance of the truce. Reports said Euron Greyjoy himself laughed at the Queen's dragons, claiming the seas belonged to iron and steel. Varys prepared a three-pronged approach. He arranged for ironborn prizes, ships, and safe harbors, so long as the lords respected the peace. He authorized the Unsullied to patrol the narrow sea covertly. And he set a trap, inviting Euron to parley under a banner of truce at Dragonstone, while a hidden fleet prepared to seize his flagship should he betray the accord. All of these machinations unfurled beneath the Queen's watchful eye. Daenerys relied on Varys' counsel, balancing her instinct for mercy with the necessity of firmness. Together they navigated the treacherous shoals of governance, where every compromise risked displeasing some ally or emboldening some foe. As summer waned toward autumn, Varys felt the first true challenge to the treaty's unity. A plague spread in the Riverlands, an outbreak of fever and curse that claimed the lives of hundreds in a single fortnight. The Lords of the Trident demanded that the Vale close its mountain passes. The Ironborn contended that the disease was a Braavosi plot. The Faith insisted on quarantines and scapegoats. Panic flickered across the realm, threatening to undo all he had sewn together. Varys convened an emergency council in the Sept of the Seven, its new white marble spotless in the morning sun. He and the High Septon led a measured discourse. Quarantine protocols, medical aid from Dorne's healers, food relief from the Reach, sanitation brigades manned by freedmen. He urged the lords to view the plague not as vengeance but as a shared fate. Only collective action could save the realm. At first, the lords balked. But when Sansa Stark offered to send maesters north with her own ret, a network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at helpopeneye.com. Varys rose early the next morning. the hush of King's Landing still lingering in his bones as he made his way through the silent corridors of the Red Keep. The Treaty of 7 Crowns lay sealed in scrolls upon the Queen's desk, and the lords had sworn their oaths, yet already he felt the tremor of ambitions unchecked, echoes of resentment and restlessness that no ritual could wholly still. Passing beneath tapestries that bore the entwined emblems of dragon and rose, he paused at a high window overlooking Blackwater Bay. The sea lay dark and placid, gulls wheeling above its surface like living motes of light. He drew in a quiet breath and let his mind sharpen for the day's work. His first task was to seek out Tyrion Lannister in the Hand Solar. He found the dwarf hunched over a cluster of letters and petitions. Highgarden's request for disaster relief after the tourney, Storm's End's plea regarding harried border patrols, the Iron Islands' proposal for a naval charter. Tyrion looked up with a half-smile. Ah, Varys. The realm calls, and how gladly it does so in the early hour. Varys inclined his head. The lords grow industrious, my lord. Yet I fear some petitions mask covert designs. He spread a new missive across the table, a letter from Lord Royce of Runestone, citing unseemly traveler ships near White Harbor carrying Dornish wine, forbidden without sanction. Tyrion tapped his quill thoughtfully. If these goods slip through, the Manderleys profit at the North's expense. Either they seek wealth or wish to drive a wedge between Winterfell and King's Landing. He glanced at Varys. What would you advise? A discreet inquiry, Varys answered. Send a raven to Lady Manderley, citing the treaty's trade protections and requesting customs records. Simultaneously dispatch a trusted agent to the docks, someone unnoted by merchants or port officials. We must determine whether this is a simple smuggling ring or an entrapment. Tyrion nodded, folding the parchment. A spider's work. I'll have the raven fired at once. As Varys left the Solar, he considered the uneasy alliances he had forged. Sandbound Martells, sea-roving Ironborn, proud Northmen, and the cultivated lords of the Reach. Each brought wealth and strength, yet each nursed old wounds. To keep them bound, he would need more than oaths. He would need leverage, favors, and the constant turning of the wheel of reciprocation. Before the sun rose fully, he sought audience with Daenerys in the Dragon Pit, now repurposed as her morning council chamber. She sat upon a simple throne of unadorned stone, her green silks gleaming like scales. 3 dragons. Adolescents now, coiled beyond iron grates in the shadows, their eyes glinting with both curiosity and latent power. Ser Jorah and Grey Worm flanked her. Missandei sat close at hand, fingers interlaced in her lap. She smiled as Varys approached. You look restless, she said. Is everything proceeding as we planned? He knelt, then rose. The treaty is honored, Your Grace, but not yet secure. Petitions pour in. Some sincere, others thinly veiled bids for advantage. Highgarden presses for faster grain shipments to recover from the tourney's expenses. Storm's End requests more garrisons along contested borders. The North wants stricter pirate patrols in the Bay of Seals, while the Ironborn seek exemptions. All are reasonable, yet each breeds friction. Then, she clasped her hands, then we shall grant the Reach's request. Charter 3 new granaries in the Westerlands to store surplus grain. For Storm's End, we'll dispatch a wing of Unsullied to train border levies. As for the North and the Iron Islands. She paused, brow furrowed. We must tread carefully, promise both safety and profit, but not at the other's expense. Varys inclined. A meeting of envoys between White Harbor and Pike would help. Dank. Let each present grievances and proposals in a structured forum. I will oversee it, ensuring neither side feels cheated. Damn. She nodded. Do it. And Varys. See to it that the pirates off the Stepstones are dealt with. Their acceptance of our charter must mean cooperation, not covert raids. At her command, Varys bowed deeply. Outside, the ancient walls of the Dragon Pit cast long shadows on the courtyard, as if reminders of what lay beneath the throne's promise. The flames of dragons and the delicate threads of intrigue. By midday, the envoys had gathered in the old sept near the Red Keep's eastern gate. Lady Hornwood for the north, Captain Harlaw for the Ironborn. The Septi's stained-glass windows bathed the marble floor in jeweled light, and the scent of incense still lingered in the air. Varys stood between them, his voice calm yet firm. This charter binds the Iron Islands and the North in mutual respect. You will refrain from raids along one another's coasts, and trade will flow through designated ports, White Harbor, Great Wick, and mainland markets. In return, each lord gains trading rights and ship permits. Vanderwantel. For 2 hours, they debated details. The harbor fees, the patrol schedules, compensation for unforeseen losses. At times voices rose, at others they conferred in scribbled notes. When Lady Hornwood objected to granting exclusive docks to Great Wyke, Captain Harlaw countered with vital timber rights on mainland lands. Varys intervened with pointed questions that forced each to consider the other's incentive. Would you risk war over a single berth, at the cost of valuable timber? Gradually they converged on a compromise. Shared access to White Harbor's trade yards every other month, joint inspection teams composed of Manderley and Harlaw's men, and a rotating schedule of ship departures. When both parties signed the accord before Varys' seal, a cautious nod of approval passed between them. A fragile but genuine truce. That afternoon, Varys slipped beneath the city's walls to the docks of Flea Bottom, where common merchants and street hawkers traded gossip as eagerly as fish and spices. He moved among them in plain clothes, eavesdropping on their talk. He heard of a new smuggling route carrying Dornish saffron northward, rumors of a disgruntled Tarly cousin stirring dissent in the Reach, whispers that a golden company sells its services to the highest bidder. Each snippet he committed to memory, or scrawled in invisible ink for later reading. By twilight, he returned to Dragonstone, parchment in hand, to brief the Queen and her hand. Tyrion listened with a rueful smile. Your network works as well as ever. Once the small folk speak, the lords must heed. Daenerys nodded. Soon the realm will see stability and prosperity. But warn me, Varys, what threat looms beyond these squabbles? He met her gaze steadily. There are murmurs in Essos, slavers unsettled by Meereen's freedom, sellsword captains angry at lost contracts, warlords who fear a united Westeros might turn its eyes east. They watch for cracks in our alliance, and where they find one, they will strike. Then? She rose, eyes bright with resolve. Then we must be vigilant. Guard our borders, shore up our bonds, and ensure that no promise made here is broken. I will ride to Highgarden next month, with one dragon behind me and the Queen's host arrayed. Let no strike come unavenged. Varys bowed, the weight of the looming campaign pressing upon him. As night fell and torches flared across the battlements, he walked alone to the tips of Dragonstow's cliffs, listening to the crash of waves below. He traced the coastline of his mind. Highgarden's fertile fields, Storm's lonely ramparts, Winterfell's silent guardianship, Sunspear's sun-drenched walls, and the iron strongholds scattered among sea-swept isles. All had pledged their oaths, but all could yet break them. He let the wind whip at his robes, and offered a silent prayer to the old gods. Grant me wisdom to hold this web, he thought, and to see the hidden patterns before they unravel. Then he turned toward the hall lit by dragonfire, where the Queen awaited his counsel, and where the fragile unity of the Seven Kingdoms would be tested anew by ambition, intrigue, and the ever-present promise of dragons. Varys rode through the dawn's chill mists toward Highgarden, the rose-shaded fields spreading before him like a promise. Behind him trailed a host drawn from each corner of the realm. Knights of the Reach in gleaming armor, Dornish spearmen in flowing surcoats, Ironborn sailors arrayed in weathered mail, even a small contingent from the Vale bearing their falcon banners. At their head rode Gendry Baratheon, newly titled Lord of Storm's End, and behind Varys strode Ser Jorah, ever watchful. The Queen's summons had drawn them all, and now the Spider Prince would ensure their oaths translated into action. By mid-morning, they reached Highgarden's outer walls, where Lady Olenna Tyrell awaited beneath a canopy of blossoming roses. Her sharp gaze passed over the mixed cohort with barely concealed amusement. A prudent gathering, she remarked dryly. Unless, of course, Its purpose is to batter my walls into dust. Varys dismounted beside her, voice deferential. Nothing so crude as seatcraft, my lady. The Queen comes in peace, bearing new laws and renewed trust. We ask only that the Reach enact the charter, levies raised for winter, roads repaired, grain stored, and that you pledge your support in person at tomorrow's council. And now, Olenna's lips curved in a needle-thin smile. Then I shall provide my presence and whatever comforts suit me. But know this, the Tyrell rose bends only to winds that uplift it. She swept her cloak of gold embroidery around her. We shall see whether this new realm sustains its promises. Within Highgarden's stone halls, Varys oversaw preparations. Banners were raised, tables set with candlesticks of silver and goblets of the richest arbor wine. Envoys from Storm's End and Sunspear took their seats alongside Tyrell kin. Northern and Vale representatives stood behind their lords in respectful silence. The chamber buzzed with polite conversation, until Varys ascended a small dais and silenced them with the gravity of his countenance. Lady Olenna, lords and ladies of the Reach, he began. You have long been the realm's granary and bulwark. Your fields feed millions. Your knights defend the southern borders, and your wisdom guides our councils. Today we ask only that you enact the treaty's terms, raise the levies for winter's defense, store 1/3 of your surplus grain in the royal granaries, and repair the King's Road from here to King's Landing. In exchange, the Queen grants you a seat on the new Council of Seven. A voice in all matters, from trade to justice. Your loyalty will be rewarded in titles, lands, and the Queen's personal favor. Nan? A murmur coursed through the hall. Olenna tapped her fan, each click echoing like a challenge. And should our granaries fail, our fields flood, or the roads collapse beneath our carts, will the Queen send her dragons to carry our grain, or her Unsullied to rebuild our causeways? Varys allowed a faint smile. Then she will stand with you as she stands with all her lords. Should misfortune strike, crown resources will be drawn upon to assist the Reach first. You have been the realm's breadbasket. Now you will be its partner. Slowly, Tyrell knights and smallfolk envoys nodded, and Olenna inclined her head. Let it be so. But mind that your partner's weight does not crush her ally. She dipped her fan again, and with a discreet gesture, had her steward present the signed documents. As the parchment was inked and sealed, Varys felt a surge of relief mixed with apprehension. One great house had been secured, but the winter's march still loomed, and the northern roads lay treacherous. He dismissed the gathering with courteous words, then withdrew to confer with Ser Jorah and the Master-at-Arms on troop dispositions. That afternoon, Varys slipped aside to meet Missandei and Grey Worm in the rose garden beside the keep. We must ensure that the levies raised here do not languish untrained, he told them. Send instructors from the Unsullied to drill, Reach recruits. Let them learn discipline and unity alongside loyalty. Missandei nodded, her dark eyes solemn. I will draft orders at once, and we will set camps beyond the far orchards. Grey Worm's silent assent sufficed. He set to organizing the Unsullied detachments. As dusk approached, Varys rode through Highgarden's terraced gardens alone. The perfume of roses mingling with the tang of magic that lingered in every breeze. In his mind he rehearsed the next steps. Storm's End's winter fortifications, Winterfell's provisions, and the Long Night's specter, the Ironborn's naval charters, Sunspear's spice routes, the Vale's mountain passes, each a vital thread in the tapestry of the realm's survival. Above him, the sky bled into twilight. In the distance, the tallest spire of the keep caught the last glow of the sun, its stone facades shifting from rose to silver. He whispered to the old gods, as he had so often when the weight of his secrets pressed him low. Grant me the wisdom to keep this web intact, that the realm may endure beyond my years, unbroken by strife. Night fell, and Varys returned to his chambers. By candlelight, he penned a raven for each corner of Westeros. To Gendry at Storm's End, to Sansa at Winterfell, to Prince Doran in Sunspear, to the Lords of the Iron Islands, to Lord Arryn in the Eyrie, even to the commanders beyond the Wall. Each message bore thanks for their oath, undertakings for the months ahead, and reminders of the unity forged beneath Dragon's flame. He sealed the final letter to Sansa last. Her oath in the godswood still vivid in his memory. He envied her certainty, her fierce protection of her people, even as he knew that only a union of fire and ice could ward off the darkness beyond the wall. At midnight, a soft knock disturbed his thoughts. He opened the door to find Tyrion, cloak drawn about him. "You're still awake," Varys said. The hand shrugged. "The realm's work never ends, though I confess I hoped that once Highgarden bent its knee, we might share a glass in peace." Varys retrieved 2 silver goblets and poured arbor red. They drank in thoughtful silence. "To the spider and the imp," Tyrion said at last. "May our cunning and our courage hold this realm together." Varys bowed his head. "To the realm, and to the dawn we have crafted, against all odds." Beyond the tower window, the stars wheeled overhead like distant sentinels, and Varys allowed himself a rare moment of quiet hope. The wheel had turned, and the world he had remade stood fortified by dragons and by oaths. Yet even as sleep beckoned, he knew that winter's trials had only begun, and that the greatest test of all lay in surviving the long night to come. Pandi. Varys awoke before dawn, long before the hush of the Red Keep dissolved into the stir of waking servants. Across the courtyard, the great oaken doors groaned as the first of the Queen's riders filed through, bound for Storm's End, where Daenerys herself would inspect the new bulwarks and musters raised for the coming winter. He dressed in plain black silks, no sigils, no hints of his origin, and took his way down the hidden stair to the oblate beneath the eastern tower, where the old tunnels of the city's ancient defenses still gaped like silent mouths. Here he paused before a low iron door, its studs worn by centuries of use. Within lay the spider's web, the network of hidden chambers he had reactivated in King's Landing the day the treaty was sealed. Slaves turned informants, beggars turned lookouts, former cutpurses turned runners, all answered to his summons. Tonight, he would convene them. For rumors of unrest had reached his ears. A faction of exiled Freys plotting to destabilize the Riverlands, a clandestine assassination ring with ties to the Iron Bank, whispers of dragon-worshipping cults gathering in the ruins of Valyria. He swung the door open and descended by torchlight, the air growing cooler, the walls slick with age. At the bottom lay a square chamber pierced by narrow slits at ground level, just enough for fresh air, not enough for a spyglass. In one corner, a battered table bore wax tablets and ink. In another, a narrow bench held coiled ropes and manacles, relics of darker uses. Varys extinguished his torch, then relit it at the brazier's embers, revealing a dozen figures seated upon stools and crates, faces half hidden by hoods. "My friends," he began, voice low yet carrying in the chamber's hush. "The realm stands upon a knife's edge. The greater houses march to winter's drum, and the Queen rides with them. But here, within these walls, a different war is waged. The war of secrets, shadows, and subtle knives. Will you aid me in keeping King's Landing, and the realm at large, safe from those—" A chorus of murmured assent met him. First to speak was Mark the Ratcatcher, sinewy and hollow-eyed. "My tunnels show movement beneath the streets, cloaked figures slipping past the East Forge. They bear no banners, no ring gates, but they speak in low Valyrian. I have no quarrel with them yet, but their purpose is hidden." Varys nodded. "Watch them, but do not engage. Let them finish their business, whatever it may be. Then report exactly what they leave behind. If they traffic in poisons or runes, we will catch them at their lair." He turned to Serta the scribe, a child bright of eye and deft with quill. "Map every entrance to this chamber, every tunnel through these foundations. We cannot afford a breach." "Ain?" Serta inclined. "By sunrise, maps will be ready." Next came Thin Ellen, once a pickpocket in Flea Bottom, now master of disguises. "I heard talk in the brothels of a Dornish courier who never left the city, bearing a letter sealed with Sunspear's son and spear. Yet no raven flew east. Varys raised a finger. Intercept that courier. Find the letter's contents, whether a plea for help or an invitation to treason. And see to it that Prince Doran's envoys know we welcome his messages through proper channels. Finally, a hulking man known as Iron Bash, a sailor-turned-smuggler, spat across the floor. The Ironborn have grudges still, Spider. Our captains murmur of raids permitted by unseen hands. They say the Queen's peace extends not to the pirates, but to their pockets. Varys' thin smile held no warmth. Then we shall remind them that peace can be enforced by force as easily as by gold. Send a boat of your best men to shadow the Blackmaw reavers. If they sail south of Maidenpool, or dare approach our wharves, they will find the Unsullied waiting in ambush. He paused, letting the threat sink in. Any man of the Iron Islands who breaks his oath will discover that dragons guard more than castle gates. The conspirators nodded, the torchlight dancing in their eager eyes. Varys extinguished the brazier, plunging the chamber into near darkness. "Go now," he whispered. "Your tasks await. The realm sleeps. Let us keep its dreams unbroken." Dende. By the time the faint lavender of dawn brightened the bay, the Queen's host was already on the march south, banners whipping in the wind. Varys, however, remained behind in King's Landing, ascending to the battlements above the moon door. There he met with Coro the Hawk, the Queen's master of pigeons, whose loft atop the dragon pit had never been busier. Coro handed Varys a small bundle of letters, reports from all corners of the city, tied with colored ribbons denoting urgency. Varys sorted through them. One from the web beneath the eastern quarter, reporting the low Valyrian speakers. One from the brothels, confirming the Dornish courier had hidden a plea for gold to fund a covert mercenary band. One from the ports, detailing Ironborn scouts testing the bay's defenses. And most troubling, a letter from the Hand himself, written on crimson-dyed vellum bearing Tyrion's seal. My dear Varys, a troubling missive arrived this morning from Braavos. The Iron Bank grows impatient with our war debts and demands repayment, or the transfer of Myrish holdings as collateral. They threaten to recall some loans that fund our granaries and armies alike. What counsel do you offer? T. Varys pressed his fingers to his temples, the city's morning cries drifting upward from below. Vendors calling their wares, hammers at the forge, a distant bell tolling the hour. The realm's unity had cost coin beyond measure. The Iron Bank's threat could unravel everything. He turned his gaze outward, to the glinting fleet in the harbor, to the winding Rose Road stretching south, and thought, blood and fire cannot sustain peace without gold. He descended swiftly to the White Sword Tower, where the Queen's remaining council convened in the war chamber. A domed room lined with maps and models of fortresses. There Ser Jorah, Grey Worm, Missandei, and Grand Maester Phoros stood about a circular table. Tyrion entered a moment later, brows drawn. Varys presented the Hand's letter. The Iron Bank demands payment or collateral, Varys said, voice low. We cannot afford to alienate them. They bankroll our realm. Yet raising taxes now would spark rebellion. We need a solution that secures Braavosi coffers without bankrupting small folk or inciting revolt. Then, Phoros leaned on his staff. We might offer royal rights to the wool trade in the Vale for 10 years, an intangible asset of value to financiers. Missandei bit her lip. But such rights can be seized by the next hand. The Iron Bank wants guarantees. Grey Worm spoke at last. Pledge the Queen's share of any future mines discovered in the Westerlands. Gold is in those hills, though locked in rock. Ser Jorah shook his head. Prospectors will scoop that up before the bank collects. We need immediate capital. Now. Varys weighed each counsel, then laid his hand on the map of Braavos. We must offer a combination. Limited mining rights for future yield, backed by an immediate pledge of the Queen's private estates in Mire. Those palaces and pavilions gifted by freedmen as tribute. Sell or mortgage a portion at a high rate. Use the proceeds to satisfy the Iron Bank's demand. Then repay with tax revenues from the new council's ports over 5 years. It hurts, but less than defaulting. Hurts.
But let
Tyrion considered. Myrish estates. The queen will grumble, but Braavosi pride values their city's prestige. If we present this as favor, not payment, they'll accept. And if we sweeten the deal with exclusive trade and spices from the Stepstones, Varys inclined. Then let us draft the letters. We dispatch ravens to the Iron Bank today, offering this arrangement, and remit interim payment from the sale of palace holdings. By week's end, the debt is settled and the bank returns to funding our realm. Daenerys' voice drifted into the war chamber as she entered unannounced, cloak billowing. "What news?" she asked. Varys and Tyrion fell silent. Then Tyrion stepped forward, laying the Braavosi proposition before her. She listened, brow furrowed, then nodded. "Do as you must. The realm's peace depends on these debts. Falls like a house of cards if we fail." That night, Varys rode in plain clothes to the docks beneath the moonlight, where Coro awaited with a quiet cob bound for Myr. They loaded casks of polished bronze and rolled crates of deeds and titles, each bearing the royal seal and the queen's mark. A small crew of unsullied guards watched over the goods. When all was ready, Varys handed papers to Coro, instructing him on the ship's course to Braavos. "Deliver these personally to Magister Volantis," Varys said. "Tell him that Queen Daenerys honors her debts, and that Braavos' treasures shall shine still within her realm's coffers." The pigeon master inclined, slipping into the darkness with his charge. Varys lingered at the water's edge, the salt breeze tangling his robes. He stared across the bay at the silhouette of King's Landing's towers, thinking of all the unseen hands at work. The tunnel spies, the harbor watchers, the rogues who trafficked secrets. Each served a purpose in the spider's grand design. When he returned to the Red Keep, he paused under a stone arch engraved with Old Tongue runes, remnants of the first men, carved long before Targaryens or Baratheons claimed these shores. He pressed his hand to the cool stone and whispered a vow. "As long as I draw breath, the realm shall not sunder. Not by war, not by debt, not by the darkness gathering under the ice." And somewhere beyond the wall, Varys knew, the others prepared as well. Sansa's banners flew high, Gendry's forges burned bright. Prince Doran's sunspear glinted in Dornish sun. Euron's ships rumbled like thunder in the Stepstones. Each thread in the web would be tested. But Varys, Scion of Dragons and Master of Shadows, would be there. In the dark, behind the throne, shaping fate as deftly as any king's hand. The winter wind rose, carrying the scent of snow and fear. He welcomed it, for only in trial could the web prove its strength.